Good morning. Yes, I'm bouncing back and I'm grateful and it's wonderful to be here. The joke, if you don't know, the center used to be called the Mastery and Life Center, and that's what Skip was starting to say, and we are now known as the Center for Spiritual Living. It's still all one and the same. We're the same place, and a lot of us are the same people, and so we're just grateful that we're all here, even if we have a new name. Well, last month, when Pierre and Barbara spoke to us, they're here today, one of the take-home messages that they gave us was, love is our essence and our identity. And when I heard that, I thought that was a really neat concept that would be fun to delve into a little more deeply this month. So that is our monthly topic. Love is our essence and our identity. So who here has heard it said that we are all one? Anybody? Okay. And who has heard it said that God is love? Yes, most of us. And who has heard it said that we are God or love expressing in the world? Okay. And now this last one, I'm sure you've all heard, change your thinking, change your life. Yes. So what brought you all here today? You already know the message.
Because it's nice to be with like-minded people.
The food. There we go. Exactly. I think we come for a lot of different reasons. Even though we know these things and we've heard these things before, we often come for the reminder. I know as I was putting this talk together, I kept reminding myself, oh yes, that's the way I want to be in the world. That's who I really am in this world. So we come together for a reminder of who it is we are and what our essence is and how we can more greatly express that in the world. I think another reason we come is for the ahas that might happen when we hear a different speaker. And one of the things that we do a little differently here at the center is we have a rotation of speakers that come through every month. So it's not just one person up here telling you their perspective, but you get a perspective of 4 or 5 different people each month. And that adds to the flavor, and that gives us a whole different way of having an aha when we show up for church on Sunday, or the center for our spiritual food. And that also happens when we take classes. We have the opportunity to share with each other, and sometimes another person's perspective gives us that aha that helps us to deepen in our understanding of those truths that I spoke before, the things that we already know, but sometimes they reach us in a different way when we hear it presented in a different way. I have a friend this week that let me know that she's been reading Science of Mind books and literature for the last couple years. And just in the last month, she had that aha where it finally started to click as to what was being said and what this could mean for her life. And then she said something that I thought was really significant. She said, you know, I'm glad I didn't find the perfect antidepressant, because being in a funk is what kept me reading. And it was through the reading that I finally reached that aha, that now she's being lifted out of that funk because she gets what it is that we teach and how it's applied to her life. So I thought that was really telling. Now we can do like she did, and we can read and we can be reminded and we can get those ahas at home when we're alone. We don't necessarily have to do them within the context of a center. So what else do we come here for? Community, exactly. Last week, or 2 weeks ago when I was here last, I introduced the fact that I was reading this book, Love and Survival, the scientific basis for the healing power of intimacy. And I'm almost done. I have a little bit more to go. But what this book has really been telling me is that there is now scientific proof for what we keep saying and what we teach, that we are all one and that we are connected. And not only are we connected, but we need that connection in order to thrive. We need that connection for our health. We need that connection to add to the longevity of our life. So one of the things we get from coming to a center like this or taking a class or joining in with events is that connection with other human beings that is essential. It's crucial to our well-being and to our livelihood. Essentially, love is our essence and our identity, and love is that glue which holds us together. And love is also like that magnet that pulls us and draws us to each other. It brings into our lives exactly who it is we need to see and have and experience in our life. One of the New Thought singers that a lot of people love to listen to is Karen Drucker. I'm sure some of you have heard of her. And she has a song in the back of one of her CDs called "We Are All Angels." And the chorus of that song says, "We are all angels who only have one wing, all angels searching for each other, all angels who cannot reach the sky because we need each other to fly." Now, isn't that an interesting concept? We are all angels searching for each other, all angels who cannot reach the sky because we need each other to fly. Now, when I went to the Holmes Institute, I stayed in somebody's home who was also going to the Holmes Institute, and she didn't like that song. She didn't like the song because she said, "We teach that we are whole, perfect, and complete, exactly the way we are. We don't need anyone else." And so what I have found really exciting and interesting about religious science is that often you'll have two concepts that seem very contradictory, and yet in reality they're both true. And that's why I called my talk today "Both and," because it's both true. We are whole, perfect, and complete, exactly as we are. That's how we were created. And we need each other to fly, to soar, to reach a greater height than we can when we are on our own. Excuse me. In our culture, we have been taught a lot in this culture here in the United States to be independent. That's the main gist, I think, of a lot of what it is that we're taught. I know in my family, my father always said, "Don't be a sheep and follow the crowd. Think for yourself." And I think that's part of what drew me to religious science, because as I've said many times from the platform here, religious science teaches us to think for ourselves. It encourages us to continue studying. Ernest Holmes has said clearly in the main textbook and in other writings, and I'm sure when he was speaking, don't just believe this because I'm telling you it's true. Try it out. See if it works for yourself. This is an area where you are encouraged to think for yourself and be independent. And we teach that we are all connected and that we are all one. And that when we do our own inner work, it benefits the whole. So we're being taught both and, not either or. So as I was trying to picture this, because I am a very visual person, and so it helps me sometimes if I have a way to picture what that really means, that we are all from one source, that we are all one, and yet at the same time we're this individualized expression of that. This is what came to me. Where do you get your electricity from? Here in Las Cruces, where does our electricity come from? El Paso Electric. Anybody not get their electricity from El Paso Electric? Okay, I even have solar panels, but my solar panels make electricity that gets sent to El Paso Electric, and then they turn around and send it back to me to use in my home. And whatever I don't use, they buy from me that stays there and gets used for other people. So basically, all of us are getting our electrical source from the same place here in Las Cruces. And yet when it shows up in our homes, it shows up in a home that looks very different. And our light fixtures probably look different. The lamps that we choose look different. We might all have a different kind of coffee pot. Some of us have microwaves and some of us don't. Some of us have toaster ovens and some of us don't. And our refrigerators might all look different. So essentially, the electricity is doing its job. It's bringing light and service to us through a lot of different expressions. And yet it's still the same source, and it's still electricity. And so for me, that's one way that I can see how it is that we are all connected and expressing the same love from the same source of love, and yet it looks different. Essentially, we're all different lampshades for the light that we're expressing in the world. Yeah? So what does your lampshade look like? What does it do? Well, there you go. It is a source. It is an aspect of God expressing. That electricity is that. So we're all connected essentially on the grid of love. That's where we are all connected. Well, I'm sure you've heard it said that you can choose your friends, but you can't choose your family. Anybody heard that? Well, in some ways, that's also true of our spiritual family. In some ways. We don't choose necessarily who walks through the door to become a part of this community. Now, we might bring a friend, and in that sense, we've chosen that person to come with us. But overall, we don't choose every single person who walks through the door to become a part of this spiritual community. And even if they show up just one time, they're part of our community for that one time. And so every person that walks through the door is like a new baby being born into our family. And when they're born into a family, the baby has its own personality, which each person brings when they come through that door. But each baby also comes ready to be nourished and loved and grow and be raised up in whatever that environment that it is born into. And so we create that environment. And I hope that we are creating a loving and nurturing environment for whatever new baby walks through the door to be nourished by us as its spiritual family. But like its spiritual family, like any family, we don't always choose, and so we might have little differences and little bumps and things that happen along the way. As Skip mentioned, I was sort of under the weather for the last 2 weeks, so I did a lot of reading. And one book that I read for fun was The Story of the Trapp Family Singers. And this was actually written by Maria Trapp, so you might know of this family through The Sound of Music. And this book I found really uplifting and very interesting because this family is one that definitely had its challenges. As you probably know, now the movie isn't exactly the way their life went, but it's very close in some areas. And so you know that they had the challenge of Hitler coming into their Austrian community, into the state, and they felt like they had to leave in order to have their safety and their well-being and their freedom. Life was going to change if they stuck around, so they decided they needed to leave. So they came to the United States, actually, and here they had to learn a new language, a new culture, a whole new way of life, and they had to figure out how to sustain themselves. And in everything, they took the idea or the belief that we will seek first the kingdom of God and trust that all else will fall into place. And that was something they did as a family. Now, we know from the movie, when Maria arrived in the family, there were already 7 children. What we don't know is that she had 4 more. I think it was 4 or 5 more children, and she lost a few also. So the family was huge when it came to the numbers of children that the captain and Maria ended up having in their lives. And so they wanted a way for their family to stay together, and they wanted a way for them to have the freedom to do what they enjoyed doing in life. So part of what they did was create a chapel within their own home while they were still in Austria, and when they eventually had property here, they built a chapel. And every time there was a challenge that came up for them or an opportunity, they took it into that chapel, into prayer as a family, and sought first the kingdom of God before they made a decision. They sought, their term for it was God's will. What was God's will for us at this time? Which direction do we go? And they would take that into prayer until the whole family was clear as to how to handle whatever that situation was. So I was thinking about, what does that mean for us today? Some of us don't resonate with that term, seek ye first the kingdom of God. For me, I often think about heaven on earth. Years ago, I'll tell you a little secret, I wanted to start a summer camp that was called Camp Ho, Camp Heaven on Earth. That was my term. So I like that term, heaven on earth. And I would always picture heaven on earth being a place where my true love self was expressed and everybody else's true love essence self was expressed, that we were living in that arena, in that realm very easily, that we experienced peace, that we had the abundance of everything that we need and want, and that we experienced joy in our interactions with each other. To me, that's heaven on earth. That's what it is that we can seek first as we move through and make decisions or face obstacles in our lives. So here at the center, we actually practice this. We just call it something different. So we seek first the kingdom of God through the activity of visioning. And Edie announced that we're going to move the visioning to the second Sunday of the month now. So not this week, but next week. And as part of the spiritual family, everyone is invited to participate in that seeking first of the kingdom. to seek first how it is Spirit is speaking through us in that visioning process, to see what ideas and concepts are coming through to help guide us as we make decisions and as we face various obstacles. On the back wall is a visioning that took place several months ago, because we've sort of gotten behind and we're getting ready to get back on the horse, so to speak. So next week we will be visioning again as we're looking into the new year, where we're headed and how we want to go. So I invite you as part of the spiritual family to come and join us for that process of visioning, to see where it is that we are being directed to go as we follow Spirit's inspiration for the center. Now, one of the things that was interesting to me in terms of this story of the Van Trapp family, and I think is also true because I've heard it within the classes, so all of you, I'm sure, have had this experience. We believe that we help to create our own reality, that we work with Spirit to create our own reality. And yet sometimes what shows up ends up looking different than what we might have had originally in our mind as we were doing our treatment work, or as we were praying, or as we were seeking to create this reality. Well, in Captain Von Trapp's mind, he didn't want his family singing in public. He felt that that wasn't becoming of a family of their stature. And so he didn't want them singing in public. And yet, in the long run, it was singing in public that saved them and gave them freedom and the opportunity to work as a family and stay together as a family. And it gave them the livelihood that they had when they came to this country. So I thought that was an interesting example, because here are people that were very much of faith. And here was another example of what the first vision was, turned out to be very different than what happened. And yet I think what we forget is to delve deeper into what it is we really want. When we look at what that family really wanted, they wanted freedom, they wanted safety and security, and they wanted to be together. They wanted some way to stay together as a family. They worked and lived together throughout their entire lives. Even the children stayed on at the camp that they created. They had a music camp where they worked in the summers, and then they traveled during the winters and sang and performed. So they got what they really wanted at a deeper level. The surface want that Captain Van Trapp had in the beginning was to have this appearance of a certain type of stature in the community. But under that desire was this desire to be together, to be safe, and to have security, and to be free. And so I think when we dig deeper, sometimes what we're getting as God's will, that sometimes looks different than our will, is really the deeper wanting that we have. And so in one of our classes, there's an exercise that we do, and I suggest that you find someone to do this with. I don't think we have time to do it during the service, but find a partner, anybody, to do this with, and the instructions go this way. Person A is just going to listen to person B. And person A only says yes, and what do you really want? And person B keeps talking. So you can talk about, what do I want for the new year? What do I want in this situation? If you have a challenge, what do I want the outcome to be? And person A just listens, and all they say is yes, and what do you really want? And person B talks again until they're sort of exhausted, and then person A says yes, and what do you really want? And person B keeps talking. And then again, yes, and what do you really want? And you do that for at least 10 minutes. And that's a long time when one person's talking. And person A does not give advice, does not make suggestions, and for some people that's very difficult. But that's your role, is just to listen and say yes, and what do you really want? And by the time you're done talking it all out, you usually get through all those layers of surface things that you think, like, I want to make a good impression. And you get down to what you really want. And so it's an interesting exercise to do. And like I said, we do it in one of our classes. So I encourage you, try that out with somebody. So our goal then is to seek first the kingdom, whatever that looks like to us, to seek out heaven on earth, to seek to be the essence of love at all times in all of our interactions. That is our goal. Now we can experience inner peace. We can experience being really loving when we're home alone, most of the time, when we're in meditation, when we're in prayer, when we're reading. But in order to know what peace is like between us and other people and us and the world, we have to have that other angel with that other wing to help us fly. We have to have that interaction and that connection with people. And so even though we say we don't invite or we don't know or choose who walks through the door, I believe that if each one of us is doing our work to seek first the kingdom, as each one of us is doing that, we're drawing into us exactly who we need to meet and who we need to interact to. So in some level, we are inviting who is joining our spiritual community. We're inviting them to us through seeking first the kingdom. And sometimes we meet that person and we just soar in bliss immediately, and it's a wonderful connection and we just get so much out of it. And other times, that person with the other wing is shedding light on some area in us that still needs to heal. Is shining light on some area where we're still challenged, where we're sort of blocking that love essence of who we are. And so that other person shows up in our life to help us gain deeper compassion, to help us experience more of how to express our love self. And maybe they're presenting love in a form that we're not used to receiving it. So we're learning how to receive in a whole different way. And that's where I think it's both and. It's true that we need that other person with that other wing, so to speak, to help us soar. Also, these people often remind us to think, how is it that I can seek first love in this situation? That person shows up and challenges us to think, how can I be my most loving self in this situation? And those things, like I said, sometimes are not always easy. So as we seek first the kingdom, and if you are in agreement or if you want the kind of heaven on earth that I described, a peaceful, loving, joyous place, does that mean that we have to stuff everything, ignore all of those negative thoughts when they show up, pretend like they're not there, hide them from each other? And I don't know about you, but I have some stories in my past that I don't share from up here. And so those are things that I share with people once I get to know you a little better. And I think some of us have a past that maybe we don't want the whole world to know. And yet at the same time, we spend a lot of energy if we're trying to hide that sort of thing. And we do that, I think, because we come up with this belief that we're either all good or we're all bad. Years ago, I started going to Codependence Anonymous, and back in the 80s. One of the things that I learned there is that our greatest fear, those of us who are the do-gooders, the ones that are, always trying to help and be good and doing the right thing, our greatest fear is to be found out that we're a hoax. Our greatest fear is for somebody to find out some of the things that actually go on in our thinking, or some of our challenges, or some of the struggles that we've had, because we want the world to see just the best in us. So we expend a lot of energy trying to keep all that at bay. And yet, what we're discovering today through a lot of different teachers, I first heard it through Greg Bear's Real Love, and I know some of you are familiar with Greg Bear's Real Love movement. And then Bob Murray and Alicia Fortenberry wrote Creating Optimism, a proven 7-step program for overcoming depression. And now this book that I've been sharing and reading lately, The Love and Survival. All three of them, so I know there's more than just them, are basically saying in order for us to heal, we have to be our true, authentic self with someone. And even more than one someone, if at all possible. Because once we realize that we can show some of those things and still be loved, that's when we really start to heal. That's when we start to soar. And that's, again, where that person with the other wing is there to help us. Because I can know all my own secrets, but until I share them with somebody else and realize that I'm not so different from them, that I'm not alone in the world with some of these experiences, then I can start to heal and move forward and realize that it's both and. It's a part of me. I might have some good, some bad. All together, I am God expressing as a whole. All of these things make up who I am. It's both and. So our essence is love, and this is our identity. And that is a really believable theory when we're on our own. But it takes coming together as a spiritual family or coming together with other people in your lives to really connect with people so you can change your thinking to that place where you get to really experience what that means. What does that really mean that our essence is love and that that's our identity? So we no longer have that either or thinking. Either I'm one with everybody or I'm an individual and I'm independent and I don't need you. Instead, it's both and. I am an individualized expression of the one. I can move out of the either or of I'm all good or I'm all bad and my past bad things define me and haunt me forever, to I am a mix of both. And I am loved and I'm loving as both. And I think that Dean Ornish put this really well in here. He says, it's not our perfection which allows us to fulfill our potential, but our vulnerability that allows us to become fulfilled. And by vulnerability, he's talking about sharing who we really are with somebody. Even when we can't fix a problem, and I'm adding or change our past, we can grow larger than the problem so that the problem becomes a smaller and smaller part of the totality that we are. So we're not stuffing it, we're not hiding it, we're growing bigger than it. We are recognizing that the love self that we are is bigger than any issue that shows up, anything that could happen in our life. We just get to grow bigger than that and incorporate it and let it be a part of who we are. We move from thinking either I keep the peace and shut up and stuff my real feelings, or I become a raging ball of angry emotion, to the both and of I keep my inner peace and I speak my truth in love. And as I do that by seeking first the kingdom, seeking first heaven on earth, I seek that beyond proving I'm right and you're wrong. I seek that to the place that that is my goal, that is my ultimate, and from that I can speak my truth and I can hear your truth. And we can move forward in the love essence that we are. So I want to close with some more words from Ernest Holmes. I don't think we can beat the writings of our founder. God in me is unified with God in all. This one is now drawing into my life all love and fellowship. I am one with all people, with all things, with all life. I listen in the silence, there's our time alone, to the voice of all humanity speaking to me, and all the voice of humanity answers the love that I hold out to it. The great love which I now feel for the world is the love of God, and it is felt by all and comes back to me from all. I understand all people, and this understanding is reflected back to me from all. I give friendship, therefore I have friends. I help, therefore I am helped. I uplift, therefore I am uplifted. I am now surrounded by all love, all friendship, all companionship, all health, all happiness, all success. I am one with life. I am one with love, and so it is. And so we just know in this moment that as we come together for the reminders, for the ahas, and most importantly, for the connection of one human heart to another, we recognize our place on the grid of love that holds us together, that attracts us to each other, that is that expression that we are one of. And so I give thanks for each new person that shows up through the door. And I give thanks for each person who continues to walk through the door. Because I know that each person that I meet in this space and outside of here is an angel with one wing, ready to help me fly. And I'm so grateful to know that I can keep my own thoughts and still share and be part of a whole. I am so grateful for this teaching where it is both and I no longer have to choose between one or the other. where it encompasses all things and expresses that wholeness in and through my life and in and through the life of each person present here today. And so it is with deep gratitude that I give thanks for this teaching and for this place to experience the truth of these words. As together we say, and so it is.